This episode is brought to you by 1Password. Imagine what your brain could remember if it didn't have to hold on to 100 different passwords. Free your brain from remembering passwords. Get 1Password. 1Password combines industry-leading security with award-winning design to bring private, secure, and user-friendly password management to everyone. Don't let security slow your business down. Go to onepassword.com/technews to start your 2-week free trial.
Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby.
It's the final countdown.
Well, what's the final countdown? 60 days for President Biden to be president.
Thank goodness. How much damage can he do?
Tomorrow is 59.
Ugh.
The day after is 58.
Painful.
I mean, all my liberal Democratic friends, and you know my friends.
Yes.
They can't figure out why did President Biden say to the Ukrainians, here's these missiles, shoot them at Russia.
Right. It's only provoking things, and he's leaving a mess for Trump.
And wait a second. So Zelensky, the way I hear it, he shot a few of them about 70 miles in or 50 miles in, which is really not shooting. And I understand, I hear from sources deemed reliable that he's selling some.
Oh, wow. U.S. made. We're spending, let me get this straight. We're spending U.S. taxpayer money. He's selling it. And what, they're driving nice cars?
My intelligence sources say he's selling some. So what is he doing with the cash?
Big question. Well, and he's also provoking possibly World War III and leaving it to Trump.
Listen, all I'm saying, I'm just repeating what I've said. I can't say it's true, not true, but it's possible.
Well, it needs to be looked into. And also, John, what about Israel? Israel.
He what did he say? He's going to forgive Hadassah?
Hezbollah.
Hadassah is a Jewish woman talking.
Yeah, that was Joe Lieberman's
He's going to
wife.
forgive Hezbollah and Hamas. But how about
sanction
the Houthis?
Israel?
He's going to sanction Israel, and he's trying to get the UN to gang up even more against
And he doesn't need to give any inspiration to UN because they're anti-Semitic and anti-Israel anyway.
It is disgusting, you guys. It is. What more damage can he do? And it doesn't make any sense, John. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat. You're going, what is this guy leaving?
Next, sanctuary cities. All of a sudden, Los Angeles City Council voted that Los Angeles is going to be a sanctuary city.
They will not deport anybody. They say they're trying to make it Trump-proof.
Do they realize what happened to their district attorney? Go woke, go broke.
Good old Gascon got the boot, thank God. Probably one of the biggest Soros-funded DAs got the boot. And, John, you're exact. And you know what also happened? The governor of Arizona just came out a little bit ago and said, no, nobody will be deported in our state, too. And we're going to talk to Congressman Andy Biggs later on in the show about
and
that.
What did our friend Tom Homan say about this?
Tom Homan said, guess what? I'm coming regardless. And I love this judge because he said, what is it? It's a code US 18.
Title 18, United States Code, Section 2.
Tell everybody.
Aiding and abetting.
So in other words,
they're aiding and abetting the violation of law.
If you are the immigration guy, the Homeland Security guy.
How about the mayor? How about the governor?
And you allowed people that were guilty of murderers, guilty of convicts, murders, criminals to hurt American people, and you knowingly that you let them in. Is that aiding and abetting?
Okay, I'm not quite sure about that one.
Judge Weinberg?
I'll tell you what it really is. Any mayor or any governor who doesn't cooperate with ICE is aiding and abetting under the statute, 18 U.S.C. Section 2.
And that's what Tom Homan, our friend who's been on the show many times, who's the new real borders are, has said he's going to look at this and say, if you don't surrender these people, governors, mayors, you might be aiding and abetting.
Carbonetti, you've been too quiet.
No,
I know.
That's the way to do it. Don't try to debate them in court. Don't do this philosophical crap. Okay, what you do is you put out a list of the 100 people with their photos and the crimes they committed. And you say, Mayor, these are the 100 I want to deport. Not families, not little kids. I'm not breaking these things up. This is the crime they committed. This is their photo. I want your help deporting them. You tell your constituents you don't want these people out.
Yeah, you put out their rap sheet.
Here they are.
And guess what, Tony? You know who's one of the worst of the worst?
The criminals.
I'll give you a name
give
of
us some
one.
breaking news.
Breaking news, WABC.
There's a new police commissioner in town.
Absolutely. Jessica Tisch, who's done a great job with sanitation.
And previously she was NYPD.
Exactly. She has experience at NYPD, and she will be now the new NYPD commissioner. I love that.
We all need to support her. Wonderful family. We wish her the best. Godspeed.
Congratulations, Tisch.
Yeah, by the way,
Godspeed.
Before we move on to that, I just want to mention a huge case, because this is what President Trump mentioned everywhere, and Tony, you brought this up. The Lake and Riley case, John. Jose Ibarra. This guy is not the poster child for the worst of the worst. His brother was tied to the Venezuelan gang. He just got sentenced to life in prison for the murder and assault of Lake and Riley. Thank goodness.
No, John, what's the benefit to putting this guy in prison for life? For 70 years, we got to pay for it. We have to pray he doesn't hurt a correction officer. I am not a guy looking for blood. Okay, but this is the guy you put to death.
Yeah, they took the death penalty off the table.
This is the guy the death penalty's made for.
Yeah, and I don't know why they took it off the table in this case, because Georgia is eligible. Georgia,
so for 70 years, we have to hope he doesn't hurt someone else?
If a drug pusher sells product to somebody and the person dies, that should be a death penalty.
I agree. It should be a role. It should be. By the way,
did you guys miss me yesterday?
Oh, well, you were too busy acting. I said I want to be your agent.
I started shooting this movie. I got to the section where we were shooting it. I got there at 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning. They put on makeup. I need a lot of makeup.
No, you don't.
I need a lot of makeup.
No, you don't.
Until it's about from 10:30 to about 11:30. We go to the trailer to hang out while they're getting ready for our scene. Well, 10 o'clock last night, they finally take us to the scene.
Get out
of
here.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't go home till after midnight.
Oh, my goodness. And Margot was there, too. Both
Yes.
of you. How beautiful. That's going to... So I just want to get invited to the premiere.
This is the new movie called Marty Supreme.
Marty Supreme. And it's with some big names.
It's about Marty Reisman, the worldwide ping pong player.
And there's some big celebrities in there, including you.
And who's the star?
Timothy Chalamet, who's a big name. Yeah. He's in Dune, Dune 1, Dune 2. And now it'll be on the header. Timothy Chalamet and John Katzimatidis and Margot Katzimatidis.
Does this mean the Katzimatidis going to be in Dune 3?
They could be. They could be. By the way,
listen, worst comes to worst, I'll buy the studio.
I thought you were buying MSNBC. I was reading the paper this morning. Okay.
CNN, Common Sense News Network.
Listen, I'm reading the papers all day long. My fingers are almost broken from forwarding them to Dominic and forwarding them to Curtis Lewa on how many crimes in our city.
Oh, horrible crimes.
And
horrible.
When it's in the studio, he just walked in, is Curtis Lewa, who is not the only knowledgeable person that knows how much crime is really going on in our city. And maybe that's the reason for the new police commissioner. Curtis Lewa, what do you say, Curtis?
Well, it's, again, emotionally disturbed persons for the most part. They stay in our shelters. Or they're homeless. They're out in the streets, or they're living in the parks or the subways. They carry these big kitchen knives on them, and they'll have a schizophrenic attack. Now, as you know, if there's one thing I know, it's emotionally disturbed people. I know most of them by first name.
Why are you looking at us when you say that,
Well,
Curtis?
no, because you're exempt.
Readily available.
But the same person that you can have a normal conversation with today, the next day they may want to slice your throat. Because they see 5 different patterns, and they're not on medication, they're not in therapy, they need to be in mental health care hospitals. Only in our city, there's state-run hospitals, 30% of the beds are occupied, 30%. So that means 70% of the beds are unoccupied. They're ready to house these men and women and care for their needs. This goes back to, remember, Andrew Cuomo came in as governor. There were 30,000 state beds. He cut the budget. By the time he left, there were 3,000. Now, look at all the people who are roaming the streets. Do your math. 27,000 people didn't just die and disappear and move away. They're living amongst us, and every day they're in a subway or a street, they're getting worse and worse. And they're going to act up. And notice, they call it now random attacks.
Well, this one the other day was horrible. We were talking about it. 3 people stabbed to death just randomly.
And
one guy was fishing.
And the answer, by the way, the advocates say, give him an apartment. That's not the answer. You have to give them fully integrated medical and psychological treatment, and you have to make sure they take their meds. Because they don't take their meds, they're dangerous to themselves and other people.
But Judge Weinberg, in this case, and Curtis, you know this case, this guy I was looking at, it was Ramon Rivera.
Rivera.
He had 8 priors. He just got out a month ago. I mean, this is somebody who had clearly violent tendencies. I'm sorry. These people need to be locked up.
Well, not
if
only
they
that,
have violent history.
He was staying at the Bellevue Men's Homeless Shelter, where they don't do any vetting, any background checks. He had an outstanding warrant for his arrest in New Jersey, and he had 7 arrests that he had cycled through in just a year and kept being released. Two times he went to Bellevue for psychiatric observation, and he was cut loose every time. And then we wonder why they act up and they attack in this capacity.
And he just destroyed 3 families right before.
3 families.
Right. Randomly.
Destroyed these families.
One's a mother. It's a mother of like an 8-year-old child. I mean.
It's the urban nightmare.
Yes.
You're walking down the street and some mad person destroys your life and destroys your family's life.
So the combination is, when you look at all these cases that he was involved in Manhattan, some of the district attorney's fault, Alvin Bragg, some of the judges. They just release them on their own recognizance. Or they say, Judge, I like this, they're under supervised release.
Right.
There's no such thing as supervised release.
Right.
They use that term.
Truer words were never said. Supervised release is a nice goal, and it's not implemented properly. And who's going to supervise them? They don't even have people to monitor with having an ankle bracelet. Who's monitoring them? They don't have the money and the funds. I had this debate a couple of years ago. They passed the first laws with Speaker Hastie. And I said, you have this unfunded mandate. There's no money for supervised release. So you're kidding everybody. There's no such thing as supervised release.
Let's go back to the migrant case. I'll never forget the 12-year-old girl in Texas, Joycelyn Nungari, brutally murdered. One of the guys had an ankle bracelet. He just cut it off,
right off,
and then he commits the murder.
Now, look, earlier this morning, not far from where the judge and I live, West 86th Street in Columbus, right? Years ago, never had a problem. A tourist from Denmark is walking down the street. 3 white guys bump into him. One pulls out a kitchen knife, slashes him up, cuts him in his ear, runs off, no arrest. 86 in Columbus. These are random attacks. These are places you never saw this before. And then the really bad one, although this is a professional criminal, he's not emotionally disturbed, is named Gary Green Eyes Worthy. Since 1984, he's been arrested over 20 times for serious felonies. He was on lifetime parole, Judge.
Whatever that means.
So where is he? Where is this guy now?
Well,
right beyond.
He's the one who just tried to kill the cop in that shootout in Queens.
Right. It was like a OK Corral.
Right. But he was on lifetime parole. He had been arrested just this year 7 times for serious crimes.
So why wasn't he remanded into custody?
This is insane.
Imagine you're on
talk
lifetime
to me
parole.
about Sanctuary City. Judge, is there such a thing as a Sanctuary City?
No. It's unconstitutional. It's against the law. Any official who says it doesn't know the law. The federal Constitution requires the officers to abide by the law.
We had lunch today with Governor Abbott.
Yeah, great conversation.
It was a great conversation. And, it came up that these people are coming in through our borders. And Governor Newsom from California wants to make sure they vote.
Yeah, it's incredible. What I love, by the way...
Let's not forget the number. 7, all the states that Kamala Harris won are states where they don't ask for voter ID.
And by the way, I also want to give a shout out to Abbott because he also talked about how he is going to open up, he said, 1,400 acres in Texas. And he said he'll be the waypoint for once you get these bad folks, you can put them there and then you put them on a plane on a one-way ticket, never to come back again.
Now, the problem is many of them are Venezuelan. Right now, we don't have a reciprocal agreement with Maduro. He won't take anyone back.
Yeah, he doesn't want them, right.
So this is where Trump is good. He'll sit down, he'll make a deal. I'll let you sell some oil, but you're going to take some of these bad hombres back. This is what you have to do, because right now you can't send them back.
heard is crime is down in Venezuela.
Yeah, they've emptied them out.
They don't want him back.
Right, they've emptied them out. And by the way, Tren de Aragua, too, is from Venezuela. Let's not forget about that.
I understand. We got Michael Goodwin on. I had a very nice dinner with him the other night.
I heard. Michael Goodwin. How was John at the dinner table? Did you have a great time?
I did. John behaved himself admirably. I thought he was an excellent dinner companion, and he didn't cause any trouble.
Oh, well, then it sounds like a boring night.
And we met so many great doctors at Columbia.
Fantastic.
Columbia Presbyterian Hospital dinner, which is called the Crown Awards. Roy Vagelis is there, who's 95 years old and going strong, and he's the chairman of the hospital.
That's a good role model.
And it's a good advertisement for a hospital,
yeah.
right?
And by the way, and the other Greek, the Niarchos Foundation, Andrew Drakopoulos, is sitting down, gave $75 million for mental psychiatry. What was it, Michael?
Well, yeah, it's mental health. Doing all kinds of research on it, as well as treatments. It really sounded fantastic, and I'm going to recommend some patients.
There's a whole city full of them, Michael.
Yeah, I was just saying. We were just talking about it. Michael, you wrote a big column also where you talked about sort of how many Democrats and many of the Democratic leaders happening in New York and elsewhere turning a blind eye to what really is going on, tone deafness.
Yeah, look, I think that elections, of course they separate the winners from the losers, but they also are a teachable moment for society at large, right? They tell us what trends are being accepted, what trends are being rejected by voters. I mean, it's not just who wins and loses. There's something larger going on here. And so, for example, I think this was a very decisive election in the sense that you had real contrast in the parties and the candidates, and you could see real differences. And so when the public overwhelmingly chooses one side over another in this way, you have to pay attention, and not just in the federal government, but the society as a whole, and that means the state and local governments. Well, of course, Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams seem to me to have their eyes closed and their ears shut. They're not paying attention. And so the latest case, an example, is the congestion pricing, the way Hochul was so disingenuous about pausing it until the election was over and then starting it, and this claim that because it was going to be $15 and now it's going to be $9 daily, you've saved 40%. No, it's now $0, and you're raising it to $9. I mean, this kind of thinking is it's government thinking. It's not real. It's not how
it's our money, Michael, not the government's.
Well, of course. But the other part of this, I think, is of course what you're talking about now with crime and Mayor Adams. I mean, after this triple homicide on Monday allegedly by this Ramon Rivera, who's a lifetime criminal, lifetime mental patient, Adams says the system's failed us. He's been mayor for 3 years. You cannot be the outside critic when you've been mayor for 3 years. You are the system. You represent, you control these systems. And if they're not working, you should fix them, and you should enlist the public to fix them. Instead, he just kind of makes the comment and moves on to the next problem. This is a problem. Both the mayor and the governor are not paying attention to the decline of New York that's happening around them. And, this report on the census shows that at current trends, New York will lose 3 more congressional seats after the next census in 2030. We used to have 41. We would then have 26 or 25. And it's a continual decline. And yet the spending doesn't change, right? The spending just goes up. Congestion pricing, another reason to drive people away from New York.
And by the way, Michael, did you see also Bragg? There was a big story about Bragg. Right now, there's no primary challenge to Bragg. Are you kidding me? After what happened with, and luckily there was some good news coming out of California. A number of these sort of soft on crime DAs got the boot, and yet Bragg He's, locking up Jose Alba. He's doing all that stuff.
Yes.
And
How is it he's
after
unchallenged?
Trump.
I don't get that.
Why can't people
and
rise
what's
up?
interesting about that is, in the first primary that he won in 21,
There was 15 people running?
Well, no, there were, I think, 6, but
6 or 7,
he actually only finished ahead by, I think, 3.5 points over the second place finisher, this woman named Tara Farrow Weinstein, I believe. She's going to be she's nominated to be a federal judge now. But she really gave him a run for the money. And had he not won that primary, he, of course, would not have been eligible for the general election, where he won with 83% of the vote. But the primary is where you have to really go after him, I think, in the first case. And right now, there seems to be no primary challenger.
Tony Carbonetti.
It's sad that that's where we are. But I wanted to get back to something you were talking about, the congressional districts. 50 years ago, New York had 3 times the amount of Florida. 3 times the amount population.
Wow.
Which translates to congressional districts, electoral college. Now Florida's passed us in 50, not that long.
Yeah, but when you lose population, Michael and Tony, what it means is you lose revenues from the federal government to the states, you lose political power, and when you lose population, you lose your tax base and your job creators.
Yeah, and if you bring in migrants, too, by the way, let's not forget how the migrants add, at least in the census.
And we're sending all of our retirees' money to Florida.
And one way to look at this, too, is I've written this several times. Florida, despite having more people than New York, has half the budget of New York State.
Almost a third.
Yeah. And if you add in New York City to any city in Florida, it dwarfs. So that's part of the problem. New York is losing population, and it continues to spend more and more and more.
We send them free money every month.
The incentives to leave are growing.
Yeah, and it doesn't get any better when we see the headlines that we were just talking about with you and Curtis. Thank you, Michael, very, very much. Great to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to come back after the break. We're going to have Andrew McCarthy.
Andy McCarthy. He's going to talk about the filing that Trump did in the Bragg case. Boy, are his priorities out of whack.
We'll see what he has to say. Let's go to break.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Cats and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Cats and Cosby. Well, we were just talking about Alvin Bragg and the crime in New York and these horrible random crimes. But Alvin Bragg is focused on Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's lawyers just did a filing a little bit ago. And joining us now is the former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District in New York, Andy McCarthy. Andy, can you kind of explain this filing? And can you believe that Alvin Bragg, as we're just talking about these horrible things that are happening in New York City, he's saying he wants to keep this case kind of hanging over potentially until 2029, till Trump leaves the White House? I mean, you can't make this up, Andy.
Well, yeah, and I think the interesting thing, Rita, is he has kind of manipulated Trump into being the one who's pushing for the delay. And that may seem odd to people, but it's a quirk of the way the criminal law works. The only way, the way that President Trump could be completely vindicated in this case would be to get it to appeal, because there were numerous errors in the proceedings, and any number of them could be reversible and get rid of the case. The problem is, in the criminal law, you have to be sentenced and have the judgment of conviction filed before the whole case goes up on appeal. Right now, even though the Democrats' rhetoric would lead you to believe otherwise, President Trump is not a convicted felon. He won't be one unless and until Judge Merchan denies his post-trial motions, imposes sentence, and then enters the judgment of conviction on the record. And I think President Trump, of course, would like the whole case to go away, but he would rather go into the White House not facing a sentence, not having a sentence imposed, and not having a criminal record, versus going through all of that just so he can get to appeal. So I think Bragg knows that, and he knows that if Trump is put to that choice, he would rather delay the case for 4 years and not be sentenced and have that judgment entered rather than otherwise.
So what happens, by the way, now, the sentencing, which was supposed to be next week, right? That obviously is, put off indefinitely, right? Or we have to wait to hear from the judge, right? Because we still haven't heard what the judge is saying.
Yeah, well, that goes to the thing you initially asked me about, which is this new motion to dismiss that Trump filed today. Now, I think legally I'm not very persuaded by it, because his argument basically is that his election as president means as a matter of law the case should be dismissed. And that would put the president above the law. There's a lot of cases that say that that's not so. But the thing is, practically speaking, what's interesting about it is Trump filed the motion, and the letter he filed today is a request for permission to file the motion. He'd like to file the motion December 20th, which means Bragg wouldn't even respond until after the holidays. And by the time Merchan could even think about deciding it, President Trump would be back in office, at which point, under the Supremacy Clause, the state officials can't take any action that would impede the federal government's legitimate operations. So I think at that point, the case would have to be frozen for 4 years anyway.
Yeah, it's wild to see it. I mean, just the politics of the fact that, that Bragg is still pushing. Judge Weinberg.
Andy, your column was absolutely terrific in National Review on this, and I read it with great interest. It seems to me you pointed out the right thing. Merchan could set aside the verdicts on the counts,
right,
and say it was tainted because they put in improper evidence, which tainted the jury, and it was used in a summation. He doesn't have to dismiss the indictment. All he has to do is set aside the verdicts, Andy.
Yeah, the only thing about that, Judge, is after a couple of years of close observation of this guy, Judge Merchan is the one who let that evidence in.
Exactly.
Even though everybody knew the Supreme Court was considering this issue, which I think was it was reckless of Bragg to offer it. It was reckless of Merchan to let it in. But in 2 years of watching the judge closely, I haven't seen one time when he admitted he made a mistake.
This is a law review article or a law school exam about the multitude of errors that this judge made.
We're sitting here.
Do you remember when he let that the testimony in from Stormy Daniels?
Right.
And it turned out to be salacious and awful. What did he do after he let it in?
He had a limiting instruction.
Realized that he shouldn't have. He started to blame the prosecutors for doing what he told them they could do.
Right, and then he also told the jury to unhear it, which you can't unhear it after you heard it.
Right.
Guys, we're all sitting here discussing legal maneuvers, and Bragg in his office has to use his staff to do this. Curtis just told us this criminal, the guy that murdered 3 people the other day, was arrested 7 times this year.
8 times.
And not incarcerated.
Yes.
Yet they're wasting all this time and energy to try to put Trump in jail. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is, and taxpayer money.
But wait a minute. Do you know whether he falsified his business record?
Exactly. There you go. He didn't commit mortgage crimes.
Right. Right. I mean, it is absolutely incredible, Andy, too. I mean, what a dangerous precedent this has set, this opening of the door. Now, the other case that's also sitting out there is the Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million case. That one's still sitting out there, too, right?
Yeah, but, they had oral argument in that, Rita, before the appellate division, and it did not go well for Tish James. So there's a chance. I think I think it's highly, highly likely that at the very least the penalty gets slashed significantly.
Right.
But the court seemed disturbed enough by the way that Tish James used that statute, which really didn't apply to the situation. It's a consumer protection statute that she tried to apply to a situation where you have sophisticated financial.
The loans are paid back with interest.
And
no harm, no foul. Thank you.
This sends out a message to all business people that you do business in the state of New York at your own risk.
Absolutely right. And I think Trump is right to say that you'd be crazy to operate a business in New York if that's the environment.
Why everyone's leaving.
Yeah, sad.
Yeah,
really,
I mean, the projection is by 2050, 2 million people will leave New York. Well, if they make it for us impossible to stay, what do you expect?
Right. And with crime, with all the other, and look at the focus, like we just said, the focus is so askew. There are so many horrible things going out there, and Bragg just seems focused on Trump, Trump, Trump.
You're right.
Andrew McCarthy, thank
And no
you
one to
so
run
much.
against him.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Great
much,
talking to you
Andy.
guys.
God bless you.
Thank you, Andy.
And Rita, you have some hot news for us?
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
Yeah, there's a lot of news, John. A House Ethics Committee report on President-elect Trump's Attorney General pick, Matt Gaetz, will remain under wraps. After a 2-hour closed-door meeting, committee chair Michael Guest said there is no agreement at this time to release the report. A judge has sentenced, as we talked about at the top of the show, the illegal immigrant convicted of brutally murdering Georgia nursing student Laken Riley. He has been sentenced to life in prison without parole. Jose Ibarra was found guilty on all 10 counts by the judge who handed down the verdict. The case drew national attention and was a big focus of the presidential election. And President Biden is celebrating his 82nd birthday today. It extends his record as the oldest sitting American president. And everybody, those are the big headlines of the day.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. We were just talking, guys, at the top. And, John, you hit it on the head. Like, what kind of damage is going to be done in the next 60 days by Joe Biden? And now it looks like things are really intensifying, so much so that the U.S. Embassy is closing in Kyiv.
We left out.
What's that?
Today is President Biden's birthday.
Oh, yeah, just 82nd. He's 82. 82.
God bless him. I wish him nothing bad. I wish him only good.
Absolutely, him and his family, for sure. But before we forget, also, I want to give a shout out because Matt Whitaker, who's a regular on the show, we love having Matt. He was acting attorney general under President Trump. He just got appointed to NATO ambassador. President Trump, Linda McMahon, education secretary, Howard Lutnick, also who we love too, and Linda too. He will be commerce. He's nominated. And Dr. Oz, Medicaid and Medicare, he'll be overseeing. So lots of friends of the show. And joining us is another great friend of the show, Victoria Coates, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. Victoria, things are so bad. They just evacuated the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv because they said they have some information that there might be some attack. What is Biden doing with the long-range missiles into Russia? And he's only there for 2 months.
No, Rita, this is a crazy situation. And I just want to give a quick shout out to my friend and former colleague, Matt Whitaker. I mean, I think this is a great appointment to NATO. I'm sure all the right people in Europe are applauding a strong pro-Trump voice coming to the alliance, and all the right people are crying into their Sauvignon Blanc this evening. So I think this is a great development. But this is so deeply concerning because Joe Biden himself in September of 2022 said he wasn't going to give the Ukrainians this capability because it could start World War III. And now suddenly, as you say, with 30 days left, this is a good idea. Who thought it through? Why is it a good idea now? And, is what they're trying to do kind of bake in a escalation in Ukraine that would make it much more difficult for President Trump to resolve because they don't want it resolved. And if they want it to be a failure for him, that doesn't, because they've failed for 2.5 years. They don't want that to stick to them. They want it to stick to the incoming president.
But you know what also, Victoria, it's also like sparking. It's on the verge when you hear the rhetoric coming from Russia, you hear all the stuff coming from Ukraine. It's like escalating things big time. It's scary. And it's also on the verge of like a World War III almost.
Look at how the pieces are moving on the global board. We have the North Korean troops now we're acting in Russia. We have the Russian missiles and intelligence going to Yemen. We have the Iranian drones going to Russia to use in Ukraine. We have the Iranians reportedly getting close to 90% enrichment, according to the IAEA report yesterday. Gee, I wonder where they got that idea. Maybe from their 3 nuclear partners, China, Russia, and North Korea. All of this is happening. It is not confined to Ukraine, and it is drifting toward a global conflict. So to take a step like this, I mean, I don't know if I agree with it or disagree with it strategically because no strategy has been laid out. It just looks like senseless escalation to me and a very dangerous signal to send with it during a transition period.
And also, Victoria, I'm half Polish. So the Poles originally wanted to give MiGs to Ukraine. Biden's team said no. And so they have made them fight this war with one hand tied behind your back. If you're going to go into battle, you help them win. You don't give it to them 2 months before you're going to leave.
100%. And that's been our problem at the Heritage Foundation all along. It's not a lack of desire to see Ukraine win. It's an utter lack of confidence in the Biden administration's approach. And I think, on November 5th, you had 80 million Americans vote for Donald Trump, elect him president of the United States. Not a single one, I would bet you dollars to donuts, did that because they wanted to escalate in Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why this is absurd. He's also giving out more money to Ukraine now. So what is the strategy? Is it to say, okay, Trump, I'm going to give you a world in total disarray? I mean, and you have to wonder, and he's also at the same time, he's undermining Israel. He's lifting sanctions on Hezbollah and Hamas. I mean, what is going on? It's like, is he insane?
I really think the money in Ukraine deserves much more scrutiny than it's gotten. This is the $60 billion that was in the most recent emergency supplemental, so that's all debt money. Those are some of our most precious dollars, which we should expend the most carefully. But the Biden administration is going to try to push all of that out the door by January 20th. It's supposed to last till September of 2025. That's FY 2025 money there. And they're going to try to flood a country like Ukraine with $60 billion in the next 8 weeks.
Victoria, is that cash? Is that cash or arms?
It'll be a combination. You can go through the supplemental and see how it's all divvied out.
And up until now, we sent over defensive arms, correct? And then this is the first time we're allowing them to use our missiles to strike Russia.
Right, to strike into
Russia. Right. It was battlefield.
Russia, yeah.
It was battlefield capable weapons, and now we're allowing them to attack into Russia proper.
Right.
Right before he leaves the White House.
It's ridiculous because he's not going to be there is no strategy.
Right.
Like you just said, it's ridiculous to do it right now.
Yeah, and it's disgusting. And if you're going to help somebody really fight, you should have given it to them on day one. If you really wanted to back them, don't do this like willy-nilly. I mean, this is crazy. Judge Weinberg.
Victoria, good to talk to you. Let me ask you a question. The hostility of the United Nations and the different organizations to Israel, what should Trump do about it, given Biden's pushing now to make it even more unfavorable for Israel?
Yeah, Judge, thank you for that question. I think it's critical. And the disgusting anti-Israel bias in the United Nations obviously has a long and undistinguished history. But there is all sorts of both general and individual defunding we can do that will literally close down some of these elements of the UN, because the United States is by far and away the largest and most reliable funder of them. So I would assume that's where they're going to start. The impulse is to say defund the entire thing. I'm fully supportive of that. There is support for it in Congress. They may find it more sort of easy to go agency by agency, but I would almost like to have a kind of a DOGE arrangement for the United Nations. And if they could find anything that's worthwhile in that cesspool, maybe we would want to save it, but I think that we should demand return on American investment. And so far we've gotten absolutely nothing. So I'd go after the money.
I can't wait for Lee Stefanik to get to the UN because, by the way, our friend of the show, Suzanne Miller, was talking with us earlier, Judge, about this mob of Hamas supporters that were rioting in a Jewish residential neighborhood in Brooklyn just recently. It's like these things are happening all over the place. So I can't wait for her to be a new sheriff in town.
But what the point being is they say, well, they're anti-Zionist. No, they're anti-Semitic. This is anti-Jewish.
And anti-American in many cases.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Those rioters were marching through saying, whose streets are streets, through an Orthodox neighborhood. And so they're making their intentions very clear, and critical that we say it. It's here in America. I mean, when we saw them drag those American flags down in front of Union Station over the summer, those were American flags. This is not an Israeli issue. It's not a Jewish issue.
Well, I can't wait. I think the world can't wait soon enough for somebody with strength and clarity and support of Israel that is clear and unwavering.
Tomorrow, it's only 59 more days of President Biden.
The final countdown.
It's going to be
the final countdown.
59 long days, John. Victoria,
Might have
thank
some
you.
white knuckles.
Well,
Yeah,
I think,
thank you, guys.
Victoria, I think President Putin is smart enough not to do anything stupid in the next 59 days.
I that is my hope as well, John. Hopefully, I just don't trust the guys on our side.
Yeah.
Scary. Victoria.
It's scary, the stupidity. I mean, remember what Secretary Gates used to say? He doesn't know of a single decision that President Biden has ever made that was correct. Well, we still don't know.
Yeah, we still haven't seen one.
And to make these decisions 60 days before he's not president anymore, it's really stupid.
It is. It's dangerous.
Thank you, Victoria. We love you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Thank you. And John, coming up, we have Congressman Andy Biggs, because the governor of Arizona came out today and said, "You're not deporting anybody out of my state, President Trump."
Well, I love this challenge.
We're going to talk about that after the break.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. The governor of Arizona saying nobody will be deported. And Tom Homan, the new border czar for President Trump, is coming in.
Did anybody tell her there's a new sheriff in town?
Yeah, and Tom Homan is saying, we're coming. Well, joining us now, John, is Congressman Andy Biggs from the great state of Arizona. Congressman, we love having you on. What was your reaction? It's a Democratic governor, and she's joining, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois and a couple others that are saying, no, I don't care who they are. We're not going to deport them. We're not going to help Trump.
Well, I immediately started thinking of all the ways we can leverage her to retract that most ridiculous, illegal statement. So that's what we're going to have to do. It doesn't surprise me, though. I mean, I served with her in the state legislature for a while, and I'll just tell you, the first act she did when she became governor was to disband the Arizona Department of Public Safety Border Security Task Force.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah, that's her first act. And so it doesn't surprise me at all, but it's not going to be so easy for her to do that. Not going to be so easy.
Congressman, how is there voter fraud in Arizona? How are these people allowing these people just to come in and hurt their families?
Well, it's crazy. I mean, I'll just tell you the state almost entirely went red this time. I'm talking from the top of the ticket down. We lost Kari Lake, unfortunately, but we picked up seats in the legislature, the counties, the cities, school boards. But for some reason, 2 years ago, we got this weird deal where you have the top 3 or 4 officials in the state of Arizona are all Democrat. They all won their seats. And we got to knock them out next time. We have to knock them out.
Yeah, it's preposterous.
We had lunch today with Governor Abbott, and he's done a great job in Texas. And I just don't understand. Kamala Harris is 3,144 counties in the country, and she only won 525 of them or something like that.
Yeah, it's like America has spoken. And yet, for some reason, it seems like your governor, sorry to say because it's your stain, obviously not yours, fair. Congressman, but.
Sad but fair.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, you know how much we love you. But you're sitting, it's like, what are they thinking? And you're right there on the border. You've got a border there. I mean, you are right there on the front lines. And the thing that's going to be interesting too, Governor, is we were just talking. Tom Homan was invoking, and Judge Weinberg, this is 18 USC, right?
Section 2.
Yeah, and this,
aiding and abetting.
You probably heard this, that he said, listen, if they won't hand them over, especially these bad ones, I mean, a lot of them with rap sheets of murder and sex offenses, he's saying we'll go after them using that code for aiding and abetting. So where do you see this headed, Congressman?
Well, I think he's exactly right, and I've said that for a long time. I know Tom's been saying it for a long time too. These sanctuary cities and states, they are aiding and abetting these illegal aliens, especially the criminal illegal aliens. They're all criminals because they crossed illegally. That's why the terms are there, and it is a crime to enter the U.S. But here's the thing. I actually spoke with a number of state legislators in Arizona over the last couple of days, and I said, I don't want to butt into your affairs at the state legislature, but if she really doesn't allow ICE to do its job, she needs to be impeached. Mm-hmm. That's the bottom line.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. And Tony, you had an idea of how to
I think
to them.
What you need to do is you need to shame the governor. Because the first round you're trying to deport, it's not, you're not separating families. There's a list of X number of criminals you're trying to, you know who they are, you have their photo, you know the crime they're accused of. Governor, these are the people I'm coming to get. I'm not pulling people out of their beds that have little kids. I'm taking the criminals. And you're telling your constituents you don't want to help me? How does that fly?
Yeah, the public relations shaming.
Yeah. Just put the ads out there in the newspapers. Photos with the crime they committed. Here's who I want.
Your thoughts, Congressman Biggs?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the first place that we're going to go, you have over 1.5 million people who already have deportation orders that had due process. Then you've got over 500,000 people who have either been convicted or indicted for criminal offenses. Those are the 2+ million you're going to go for.
Yep.
And I will tell you, that's where you go. The public will be outraged. Here's the deal. In order to know shame and respond to it, you have to know shame. You have to understand that you're being shamed. And I don't know that she's going to be able to catch on to that. Now, maybe one of her advisors, I know a couple of her advisors, maybe they can catch on. But here's the deal. If she takes that stand, then she's going to have a real tough time getting reelected.
She's arguing to protect these criminals?
Yeah, well,
again.
She is. That's what the whole deals have been about. But I'll just tell you, just like the rest of the country, though, Arizona went red and gave a strong statement. Donald Trump won significantly in Arizona. They thought it was going to be close. It was far better than we thought it would be. And there is a mandate in the state to go red, and she's going to have to respond to that.
Yeah.
Look, we're not heartless. You're going to make an argument that there are certain people that did sneak into the country and are trying to start a good life for themselves. By the way, over the next couple of years, make that argument. But let's get the criminals out now.
And also, Tony and Congressman, of those criminals, and you just so eloquently described it's about 500,000. It's 13 million convicted murderers that we know of. It's 15,000 convicted sex offenders. Like you said, I mean, these people, they know who they are. So that's going to keep, you would think, local law enforcement and ICE, right. All those guys, start with them.
While that's happening, we can discuss all the others.
Right. I mean, It is going to be. How do you see this playing out, Congressman? Because President Trump is saying he wants to start a day one. And Tom Homan, who we all know is a friend of the show, he's been on here a lot. He's saying he's going to hit the ground running day one. You can either, if you're going to stand in my way, we're going to go through you, was his
60
answer.
60 days to go.
Yeah, he's ready. Tom's ready. I know he's had a plan since he left office, right? Left his position, and there are a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people at ICE and others that are working border enforcement, CBP. They're ready to enforce the law. They want to do it on day one. And I'll just tell you the other thing that happens when people start seeing you deporting. There'll be a lot of self-deportations. That's what happens. They will leave. Eisenhower proved it when he did a big deportation, and that's what's going to happen. So I'm grateful Trump's there, and I'm grateful he put Tom Homan there, who's really tough. And there's some other guys that are out there that are equally tough that I would love to see working in that. But it will happen, and people like Governor Katie Hobbs in Arizona, they will not be able to stand in the way of that.
Yeah, one of the other things, there was a hearing today, and it started yesterday, it extended today. It was heartbreaking on these 300,000 missing kids. I mean, you never heard Kamala Harris talk about the 300,000 missing kids, migrant kids. That's another thing we know. Tom Homan's going to try to track them down. President Trump said he's going to try to find them. There was one guy who said he was a sponsor, claimed he was a sponsor, Congressman, and he brought in 2,500 kids. This is not like somebody who wants to be dad to these 2,500 kids. It's heartbreaking.
Right. We fear some of them have been killed, sold into sex slavery, being used as underage cheap labor, that type of thing. But the bottom line, you get back to it, and you really hit on it. We had Becerra in front of us today. They claimed that they vetted these people. They didn't vet these people. You actually had an MS-13 become a sponsor. They didn't vet that dude. He was just an MS-13 guy. You've had others where the sponsors have killed, raped these people, pedophiles, all of that. But this administration never takes accountability. And that's why one of the reasons I think they lost is because the American people said, we want accountability. Things aren't good. We think you did it, and we can't put Kamala Harris there. But that's right. Big, huge problem. We've got to fix that.
Wow, that's amazing that a gang member said he wants to sponsor and he gets the child. One of the things, too, Tren de Aragua, the other gang, the Venezuelan gang, and by the way, the brother of Jose Ibarra, who, thank goodness, just got the ultimate penalty there in Georgia that the judge would allow in this case, life in prison. That's the Laken Riley case. Thank goodness he's been sentenced. But that's now supposedly in like 16 states. I was watching somebody from Tennessee today talking about how bad it is that they're going after cops. I mean, how bad is it in your state?
It's present in our state, but it's actually present in D.C. now. It is spreading around. By the way, MS-13s are in virtually every state. There are cartel affiliates in virtually every community. I've been briefed on that. Virtually every community in this country. And now Tren de Aragua is coming in, and they are particularly vicious and brutal. And, you know, by the way, on the Laken Riley, you got Jose Ibarra, who's the murderer. The prosecutor there, the DA, did not request the death penalty, did not do the proper pledge.
Yeah, why
we
is
were wondering
that?
why.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, she is a dyed-in-the-wool Harris Waltz person. She's one of these social justice warrior types, and you know, I'm glad she prosecuted, but she did not go after the death penalty in what I consider to be a very heinous case with the requisite.
The public is not served by having this guy in prison for 60 years or what. It's
right.
Ridiculous.
And I don't know if you saw his face today, guys, when he was
no remorse.
He was just kind of sitting there smiling, like no big deal. I mean, if anybody deserves,
he's a walking advertisement.
He will prosper
walking
in prison.
Advertisement for the death penalty.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you explained it because we couldn't figure out why they didn't go for it because Georgia's death penalty eligible.
He'll be the gang lord in prison.
Yeah, how sad is that?
Well, it's ridiculous, and that's one of the. I'm glad he was convicted, but in reality, if you want to deter, I mean, what is the death penalty other than a specific and a general deterrence, and allows society to heal a little bit, and now you have some specific deterrence because he's going to be in prison, but he's going to be with other people in prison. They will. He's going to probably
with nothing to
cause
lose.
Trouble there.
And correction officers have to be on guard for the next 60 years.
Yeah,
right.
Congressman,
Nothing
thank you. We
Thank
love
you so
having you
much,
on.
Congressman.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thanks.
You're always fighting the great fight.
Please
Thank you for joining
protect
us.
Arizona.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Congressman.
And what do we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
God bless America.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.